this away so I can get better. I don't like to get down. I feel how love has changed. It's not the same. All your time, yeah. See, it's better. How can I see this way of feeling? All the times you spend with it's just better. See everything's better. And no matter what they do, if you're here, it's better. And I told you. Oh, so all I wanna say is everything's better. And no matter what the day. Hello, Patrick. Mwah. How are you doing? See what I say is everything's better. I hate it when I got that song in my head and I've already had it in my head once before. Oh, what a day, what a world. And I have stopped sneezing now. Thank God. Ish. Say what I wanna tell you. Everything's better. And all to do 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 do. As boys on, boys on. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. gonna break us apart. Hello, 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 what morning? How is what morning? No, 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 no. Ole, 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 ole. Ole, do, oh, oh. I started watching Criminal Minds. I've not really seen it properly. I only saw a few episodes and I just stopped watching it. So I decided to start it again. This time I'll be watching the whole thing. Whole 15 seasons. Oh, I'm glad you're okay. Meow, 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 meow. Do, 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 do. See, see. Do, do, do. Do, do. Na, 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 excuse me. Luckily I had some hay fever caplets or whatever they call them. It helped stop the sneezing. It didn't really help that Gary had to make me sniff the freaking pepper pot. So that's one of the reasons why I was sneezing a lot. Bloody hell. What are his fault for like that? All the, what do they call them? The chicken noodles that we had last night. Made me sniff the bloody packet. What the hell? Funny times, funny times. No matter what, no matter how, Do 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 do. Oh, well, Patrick, my start of the week journey for the tarot cards are very freakily accurate. Now today's one, I shuffle the cards every time I do it, and it says awaiting results. And I looked at the image and that, and I'm like, what the hell? I am waiting results. I am waiting for appointments, etc. I'm like, how does it know? It's kind of freaky. It's like, how does it know that? You know, what, when you pick a card out, and it's just so freakily accurate. There it is. Haha. Yay! Do 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 do. But if you want someone, say it like you mean it. Excuse me. Well, my lovely Betsy trolley held up 25 kilos of things. I was absolutely quite surprised because we humped back the trolley. Oh, and then someone tried running me over, but there you go. She swerved two cars, and then nearly hit me because it had the all clear for me to walk across, and this woman came out of nowhere and just decided to speed off. She had to quickly pull on her brakes because I was on the road, so it was my right of way because I was crossing the road. She nearly frickin' hit me. Bitch. I my sister Nicole. I will never call you a bitch. It was a driver that nearly knocked me. It's like she sped round and it's like, what the frig? It's like, slow the fuck down, mate. And she swerved 2 cars. It's like, how much of a rush is she? Luckily, she had to let me go across the road because I was in the right. I was just about to walk across the path, road, rather. Better what the days you're here. It's better. Downtown, I'll sing you for downtown. Oh boy, oh boy. Come and play, come and play, come and play. It's only me. Na 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 na. Hey hey hey. Bye. The way oh, bollocks, 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 bollocks. And done itself. Boo. What you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? Get face, get face.
I just got to have a word with Ray.
Oh,
Right.
right.
Hello. Tell him what I'm going to do. Oh.
Oh, what do we have here? I'm not mad, I'm just being silly. Na 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 na. Hey hey hey, good dog. My 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 my. Do 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 do. I'm out of here. Let me make it clear to you, my dear. Not enough for love, so I'm out of here. My almighty own sweet love.
There's a big hole in that back.
Oh.
Big hole in that back porch. So I'm just telling him that I've been picked more sand and cement up. So I said I'll get cracked on with it tomorrow. So I've got 3 coping stones to reattach and 2 of the giant coping stones at the top of the corner posts. Got to put them in. Got to finish that pointing off. And then there's the back to do. The back porch roof. All the cement's come out of it. So there I go, hi Patrick. Hey well. Hey Patrick. Want your light on?
Yeah, please.
Oh. I'm trying to figure out. He's dead. We're gonna get. Hold on.
I forgot to.
Yeah, it's alright. It's alright, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I've got another one. I've got backups. I've got backups on backups. Sort it out. Bear with me a minute.
I'm holding my knickers on. What you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? Bad boys, bad boys. Do 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 do.
Okay.
Okay.
Bear with me. Sorry, I thought I had more. Think it'll be sunny tomorrow?
Hope so.
Yeah, so do I. There you go.
Let me have a zook.
Skylight roaches. Cloudy again, isn't it? Yeah. As long as it's not raining, it doesn't matter. So we can get the rest of that cement work done. I've got to underpin that panel, haven't I? Because I've put all that in now. So it just needs all cement underpinning.
Scatter like roaches.
Yeah. So I've got to get cracked on with that tomorrow. There's a lot of work to do. So I'll figure out what to. Oh, you want some dinner? I've got no treats for you, cat. I'm sorry, we ran out. And I couldn't get you any from the shop. They only sell doggy treats. Dinner. Get you a dinner. Get you a dinner. Okay? Remove this. Remove this. Look. Oh shit, that's what I've not done. Fucking boiler. Take that bastard down. Yeah, that's it. That's it. I need my fucking burn my face off. The fucking boiler turned right up. Burn my tits off, baby. Do 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 do. What dinner do you want? What flavour? What would you like? You want any dinner? What have we got? I've got no fish for you. Lamb. And chicken. Give me your chicken. Yeah? Okay? Sorry I've got no treats for you.
Mummy will get them tomorrow.
There you go. Good girl. Hey?
I'll get them tomorrow.
Hey.
Oh, what's done?
You haven't done anything, why? I'm just trying to figure out what to have for dinner.
Thought I've done something wrong.
Yeah, have you heck? you'd done something wrong, you'd hear that. Nice. Good girl. Good girl. Right, so she's fed, and we've just got to figure out what we're having. What we want to have. Fencing. If you're here, it's better. Alright, that's it. Putting something on.
This man, Akeem Joseph Marino.
In 1998, Akeem Marino came forward and confessed to the rape and murder of a restaurant worker.
I did this awful crime and I was alone.
But this man, Chris Ochoa, had already confessed to that crime and was serving a life sentence.
I pleaded guilty and confessed.
One of them was lying. To find out who and why, scientists look once more at the forensic evidence. Austin, Texas, the state's capital city. 20-year-old Nancy DePriest lived here with her husband, Todd, and 15-month-old daughter, Sylvia.
She was so very friendly and very open to anyone. She just loved people. She was just like a people person.
Nancy was a waitress at a Pizza Hut restaurant. On October 24th, 1988, she arrived for work at 7 a.m. Her job was to get the pizza dough ready for lunch before the rest of the employees arrived. The manager of the restaurant called several times that morning to make sure everything was all right, but there was no answer. When he stopped by the restaurant around 9:30, he found Nancy slumped under the bathroom sink, nude and barely alive. She had been shot in the back of the head. Nancy was rushed to the nearest hospital.
My son-in-law said, "Mom, there's been a robbery. They shot Nancy." I said, "Todd, how bad is she hurt?" He broke down and he said, "Mom, she's on life support."
Nancy died later that day without regaining consciousness.
I began to scream. I was totally hysterical.
The murder occurred before the restaurant opened, so there were no witnesses to the crime. The Austin Police Department found no signs of forced entry at the restaurant. The motive appeared to be robbery, since money was missing from the safe. On the floor of the bathroom, police found a .22 caliber shell casing from the murder weapon, and Nancy's autopsy revealed she had been sexually assaulted. 2 weeks later, investigators got their first break in the case. 2 employees from another Pizza Hut restaurant, 22-year-old Chris Ochoa and 19-year-old Richard Danzinger, went to the restaurant where Nancy had been murdered.
So we ordered a beer and he toasted to the memory of Nancy.
To Nancy DePriest, we won't forget you.
To me, I found it kind of strange.
Nancy's co-workers quickly informed authorities. Ochoa and Danzinger were later questioned by police.
He started grilling me about what I know about this murder and this rape, and I told him nothing. We went round and round for a couple hours. I don't recall how many hours. But he said, at one point, he said, "You know what? We know you're not capable of this, but we know you know something."
Detective Hector Polanco, at the time a 12-year veteran of the force, took over the interrogation.
At one point, he showed me pictures of death row. He showed them to me. He said, "This is where you will live until you die." So I still kept on saying, "I don't know anything."
Richard Danzinger and his girlfriend, Donna Angstad, were also questioned.
They were absolutely horrible to me. One time, Hector Polanco pounded his fist on the table, and I thought he was coming across to grab me. I came up out of my chair and hit the wall behind me. It scared me so bad.
Donna said she and Richard were together in Donna's apartment at the time of the murder.
I took a lie detector test, and they told me I flunked it.
2 days later, Chris Ochoa confessed to the rape and murder of Nancy DePriest.
I did it. I pleaded guilty. And it was, I can't describe it.
He also revealed that his friend, Richard Danziger, was his accomplice. Ochoa said he and Danziger entered the restaurant with keys the two had obtained. They found Nancy alone, preparing pizza dough. After ordering her to remove the money from the safe, Ochoa said he and Danziger bound, gagged, raped, and shot her. Ochoa said he was the one who pulled the trigger. When the DNA results came back from the lab, police had even more proof that Ochoa and Danziger were the killers. Chris Ochoa not only confessed to the rape and murder of Nancy DePriest, he became the state's star witness against his friend and co-worker Richard Danziger. Nancy's family was relieved that the case was concluded quickly.
Not so much satisfaction. I didn't feel that. I guess relief that they weren't going to be able to do it to someone else.
Bolstering Ochoa's confession was the DNA evidence. A blood sample from Chris Ochoa matched the DNA from semen on the victim's vaginal swab.
I examined a vaginal swab specimen from Nancy DePriest. DNA was extracted from spermatozoa on that swab, and then DNA typing was done using a single gene that we had available at that point in time, and a result was obtained from that gene that was actually compatible with Chris Ochoa and about 10 to 16% of the population.
Statistically, there were 3 million other Texans who might have shared the same genetic marker. But this wasn't the only forensic evidence. A brown hair found in the restaurant bathroom was microscopically similar to Danziger's. Richard Danziger pled not guilty and insisted he was innocent. But the strength of Ochoa's confession and the forensic evidence were too great. The jury deliberated just 7.5 minutes and found Richard Danziger guilty of aggravated sexual assault. He was sentenced to life in prison. In return for his testimony, Chris Ochoa avoided the death penalty, but he was sentenced to life in prison.
When I said I would sit in my bed crying to God, why? Why? I would ask him, I'm tired, God. Tired. I was very tired. And at some point, I wanted to end it all.
Life in prison was even harder for Richard Danziger. After 3 years behind bars, Danziger was assaulted by another inmate who mistook him for someone else. Danziger was kicked in the head with steel-tipped boots. He survived, but suffered permanent brain damage.
It's just, what's happened to him is horrible. He's going to need care for the rest of his life.
But the story doesn't end there. 8 years later, Austin police received a letter from Akeem Marino, who was serving 3 life sentences in another Texas prison for a string of robberies and sexual assaults. Marino claimed that he was the one who raped and murdered Nancy DePriest. Marino claimed he had undergone a spiritual awakening while incarcerated and wanted to set the record straight.
I did this awful crime and I was alone.
Marino said the El Paso Police Department had the gun he used to kill Nancy DePriest. They had taken it when he was arrested on an assault charge. Homicide detective Manuel Fuentes was assigned to investigate Marino's story.
I got a call from El Paso police department, and the detective there said, "You're not going to believe this, but that gun hasn't been destroyed. We still have it in evidence."
Scientists compared Marino's .22 caliber handgun to the bullet removed from Nancy DePriest. The ballistic examination did not reveal a match. It appeared there wasn't much more to investigate. 2 years later, Akeem Marino tried once again.
I want to thank Speaker Laney for your friendship.
This time, he sent a letter to then-Governor George W. Bush with a copy to the prosecutor's office.
I told him basically the same thing, that I had committed a murder in '88 at the Pizza Hut, and that there was 2 innocent men who I did not know locked up for it.
This time, Detective Fuentes visited Chris Ochoa in prison. Once again, Ochoa repeated what he had been saying for 10 years, that he and Danziger had acted alone.
And I told him, yeah, you're right, I did it. So you know what, just let me do my time.
And he said, as far as he knew, there wasn't a third person involved. It was just him and Richard that killed Nancy DePriest.
So there was little more authorities could do, especially since Ochoa's DNA matched semen found at the crime scene. It would take 1 more year before one of these men finally changed his story. For almost 11 years, Chris Ochoa continued to maintain that he and Richard Danziger were responsible for the rape and murder of Nancy DePriest. But 1 year after Akeem Marino wrote a letter to the governor's office saying he murdered Nancy DePriest, Chris Ochoa changed his story.
Did you kill Nancy DePriest?
No, ma'am.
Just tell me you did. Look me in the face and tell me you did it.
Ochoa now claimed that his confession had been coerced. He said he was physically assaulted, threatened, and denied access to an attorney during police questioning.
A female detective, an Hispanic detective. She come in and I asked her, you know, can I have an attorney? And she got real upset and said, you can't have one until you're officially charged.
In search for help, Ochoa contacted the Wisconsin Innocence Project, a group that investigates cases in which they believe an innocent person has been wrongfully convicted.
And I told them, please help me. I don't know who else to turn to. You know, I think one of my closing lines was that I told them, I've lost faith in the system, but I haven't lost faith in myself.
But the founder of the Innocence Project, John Prey, wasn't sure what to think.
We called up Chris's attorney to get his side of things and say, sometimes the attorneys say, I'm concerned about this case and he may be innocent. Unfortunately, in this case, we got the complete opposite. Chris's attorney told us we are totally wasting our time on this case. He is very guilty.
And if Chris Ochoa was innocent, why did DNA tests place him at the scene of the crime? 12 years earlier, tests could only analyze one gene from Nancy DePriest's vaginal swab, the gene called DQ-alpha. But by the year 2000, the accuracy of DNA testing had advanced to a level where 10 genes could be analyzed.
The DNA testing that I'm doing today is more complicated, harder to interpret, more discriminating.
The Wisconsin Innocence Project asked local prosecutors to send Nancy DePriest's forensic samples for more sophisticated DNA testing, which they did. 12 years after Nancy DePriest's murder, Karen Scalise compared Chris Ochoa's blood DNA to the vaginal swab taken from the crime scene.
I sort of went, oh my God, and just immediately double-checked it to myself.
Just to make sure, additional DNA testing was also done by Ed Blake, who had performed the original DNA test a decade earlier.
When that work was done, ultimately Chris Ochoa, Richard Danziger, and Nancy DePriest's husband were all eliminated as the source of the spermatozoa from Nancy DePriest.
But there was still the issue of Marino's gun. Detective Fuentes decided to send it to another lab, the Southwest Institute in Dallas, for more tests.
The shell casing, without a doubt, matched the gun that we got from Akeem Marino, and this was the shell casing that was found inside the Pizza Hut. So now we had DNA. Now we had a bullet or a shell casing that was ejected at the crime scene that matched the gun that we got from Akeem Marino.
As a last step, prosecutors compared Akeem Marino's DNA to the semen from Nancy DePriest's vaginal swab. It matched, just as Marino said it would.
Everybody says they're innocent in prison. But yeah, some of us actually are.
Akeem Marino's confession includes a chilling account of what happened the day Nancy DePriest was murdered, but it also answered many questions.
I was wearing a workman's uniform with a false name on it. And I knocked on the side door, and Miss DePriest came up and unlocked the door just before the restaurant opened.
Once inside, Marino held Nancy at gunpoint and demanded the restaurant's money.
Hey! Get into this thing. Get in there.
Then we went to the restroom where I disrobed her, then assaulted her one time. After that, I told her that I was going to handcuff her to the plumbing underneath the sink and leave her there. She got underneath the sink. I shot her in the back of the head one time with that .22 firearm.
But he made the mistake of leaving the shell casing behind.
I was looking for that shell, and I couldn't find it anywhere. After that, I went back, got my bag, packed my stuff up, and I left.
Marino says Nancy reminded him of a female guard he knew from prison, a woman he detested.
When I came out, not only did I intend to kill a whole bunch of blacks and Mexicans, but I told myself the first white woman I ran across that looked like I was going to blow her brains out, and that's exactly what I did.
But the bigger question is why Chris Ochoa would repeatedly confess to a crime he didn't commit.
You have to be a psychologist. I'm not. It's hard for me to conceive. In fact, when I first met Mr. Ochoa's attorneys and Mr. Danziger's attorneys, when they first brought me back, the first thing I asked them was, what in the world made Ochoa confess?
Most people will come and tell me, I would have never confessed to that. You know what? Don't tell me that. Because you weren't sitting in that chair.
Ochoa said he was threatened with the death penalty unless he confessed, a technique most law enforcement interrogation experts say is improper.
The law, fortunately or unfortunately, allows police officers to lie to individuals being interrogated.
What they can't say is, if you don't confess to me, you're going to get the death penalty, if they knew that to be a lie, or if you do confess to me, I'll make sure you don't go to prison or you don't get charged on this crime. So they can lie about the evidence and they can lie about other circumstances having to do with the interrogation, but they can't tell lies that could be regarded as promises or threats.
Ochoa said his confession included details of the crime because police showed him pictures of the crime scene before his confession.
Off the top of my head, I can't think of a circumstance in which it would be appropriate, because it contaminates the suspect, and it means that if they are innocent and made the false confession, you'll never know.
Ochoa also says he was threatened physically.
Look me up and down and say, you're young, you've never been in jail, you're gonna be fresh meat, and they're gonna have you. I'll put you in a cell where they'll have you. And to me, in my mind, that triggered off, well, they're gonna rape me.
Experts say the way to prevent police-induced false confessions is to videotape the entire interrogation. If a suspect later alleges police misconduct in the interrogation room, the videotape can be evaluated.
If Chris's confession had been videotaped from start to end, there is no way that this would have happened. First of all, the police officers undoubtedly would not have acted as they did. It would have been a deterrent to their misconduct.
Currently, only 2 states require all suspect interrogations to be videotaped: Alaska and Minnesota. The Austin Police Department changed its policy and now videotapes the interrogations in all homicide cases. After 12 years in prison, on January 16, 2001, Chris Ochoa was a free man. 2 months later, Richard Danziger was released to the care of his family. Because of the brain damage he sustained as a result of the prison fight, Richard Danziger will require specialized care for the rest of his life.
Sometimes I think about Richard, and he, you know, I feel very bad. I mean, because I didn't have the courage to face up whatever might come to me so that he wouldn't go to prison.
The officers involved in Chris Ochoa's interrogation have all refused to comment.
I was a little kid. They told me that police officers were there to take care of you, to protect you. I thought that they couldn't do no wrong. I thought they were honest. But I see that not all of them are.
I lost my child. I loved her so much. I miss her every day still. For 13 years, I miss her every day. And Chris lost 12 years, his youth, his whole youth. Richard Danziger is brain damaged from a beating he received in prison. He's still serving that life sentence. He'll serve it out.
In 1991, this tranquil pond in rural Connecticut was the scene of a horrific crime. 2 young boys were beaten, thrown into the water, and left for dead. Investigators had little evidence until they examined the pond itself and found thousands of clues invisible to the naked eye in a simple drop of water. Waterford, a small Connecticut town where the water table is so high, homes are built around numerous small ponds and lakes. In 1991, 2 boys we'll call Stephen and Bobby decided to spend their afternoon fishing at their favorite spot, Stenger's Pond.
Oh, that's pretty good. I told you.
Sometime later, they were approached by 3 older boys they didn't know. Without warning, one pulled a knife. The other 2 threw Stephen and Bobby to the ground. Stephen tried to fight back, but was hit on the head with a baseball bat, almost knocking him unconscious. Both boys had their hands and feet bound with duct tape and their mouths covered. Once out in the pond, Stephen was hit once again and held underwater so that he would drown. Bobby was next. Fortunately, he saw the bat coming and ducked, then pretended to be unconscious. After throwing Stephen and Bobby's fishing rods in the water, they took the boys' bicycles and fled. Bobby was able to remove the duct tape from his hands, mouth, and feet. He swam to Stephen to try and save him. By the time he got there, Stephen was unconscious. Bobby managed to get him to shore, then carried him a quarter-mile to the nearest home. Deborah Chamberlain heard a frantic knocking at her door.
One had a serious head wound and was not very coherent, and the other was just almost hysterical. And so I knew that something awful had happened to the two boys, and that would be something that we would sort out over the next couple of minutes. But I think the duct tape was really almost my first impression, because I thought, oh my God, someone taped their wrists together.
Stephen was rushed to the emergency room of Lawrence and Memorial Hospital. Dr. John Urbanetti was Stephen's doctor.
Despite the number of people that I've seen with this kind of circumstance, he came as close as I've ever seen anyone come to not surviving.
As Stephen lay in intensive care, doctors questioned whether he would live or die. And Waterford police had questions of their own. Who had tried to murder Stephen and Bobby? And why? Waterford Police Detective Donald McCarthy was assigned to investigate the assault and attempted murder of the two young boys at Stenger's Pond. 13-year-old Stephen was fighting for his life, the victim not only of an attempted drowning, but of massive head wounds.
One of the doctors had told one of my detectives at the time that it was the closest he had ever seen anybody come to drowning and not being dead.
He was very lucky. The older child was unconscious. Had he not had his little friend with him, he probably would have drowned, I think.
Stephen's friend Bobby had escaped serious injury.
I think the remarkable thing is he had the presence of mind to immediately go to his friend and pull his friend from the water.
There's no doubt in our minds, if he did not remove that duct tape, the older male would have died if he did not remove him from that body of water.
When he came to the door, the little guy, amazingly, was quite a bit smaller than his friend, was just literally supporting him completely.
Police went to Stenger's Pond to collect evidence, but they ran into a major obstacle. The crime scene was a body of water.
The fishing poles, the tackle box, the suspects had tried to sanitize the crime scene by throwing those items in the water so that the police would not recover them, making it difficult that the fact that they were submerged in water, we would normally not have fingerprints available to us.
The bat used as the weapon was found floating in a nearby sewer grate, but there were no fingerprints. And any other possible evidence, such as hairs and fibers, had apparently been washed into the water. Police talked to residents of the neighborhood closest to Stenger's Pond to see if they had seen anything unusual. Susan Picardi came forward to say that earlier on the day of the attack, a young teenager she had never seen before came to her door asking for help.
Can I help you? Yeah, I was walking down the street when I began to feel a little lightheaded and hungry. May I come in and get something to eat?
He said he wasn't feeling well. He was a diabetic and was in need of something, whether it was sugar or orange juice or a piece of chocolate or something. I immediately felt bad for him and invited him in.
Come in and have a seat, and I'll get you some juice. Thanks.
Mrs. Picardi gave the young man a glass of orange juice. A few minutes later, he said he was feeling better, thanked her, and left.
Because I can call a doctor.
No, I'm fine. Thanks.
Later, as Mrs. Picardi was about to take a shower, she saw something unusual in her bathroom mirror.
And I caught the image of what was going on in my backyard from upstairs. And I saw two other youngsters in the corner of my yard, teenagers, 16-ish, around there. A redheaded boy and another Afro-American young man.
And they were later joined by the young man who just left Mrs. Picardi's home.
She gave me orange juice. She treated me so nice.
The boys had a bright green baseball bat and what looked like rolls of duct tape.
I automatically panicked and knew whatever they had planned was not going to happen at my house. So I yelled out the window to them, I think you better leave. It's obvious that you're planning something or you're up to trouble, and I'm calling the police. So if you know what's good for you, then you better get going.
Susan Picardi was able to provide a detailed description of the boy who'd come to her door.
Mr. Picardi told us two things that stood out. One, he was wearing eyeglasses and described those eyeglasses to us. The other was he had an unusual shaped scar, a U-shaped raised scar on his forearm.
Since the perpetrators were apparently on foot, police checked the neighborhoods nearest to Stenger's Pond.
We put officers in that neighborhood and started doing neighborhood canvasses, and that based on the description of the three suspects. As a result, we were able to identify the suspect immediately.
This suspect, 17-year-old Brian Davis, had the upraised scar described by Susan Picardi. Neighborhood informants identified the two friends Davis spent the most time with. One was 17-year-old Christopher Green. The other was an African-American juvenile whom we'll call Jason. All three suspects fit the descriptions provided by Susan Picardi, but denied they were involved in the assault. In Christopher Green's house, police found a knife like the one Bobby had told them about. In Green's basement, they found a pair of wet, muddy sneakers.
We inquired of the suspect, why are these things wet? He was trying to tell us that it was as a result of walking through mud puddles and things like that. As soon as he said that, we started working on a theory that, how do we attack this? He's coming up with a defense. This is how my clothes got wet. I was playing in mud puddles and things like this.
Was the mud on Green's sneakers from Stenger's Pond? And if so, how could scientists prove it? For the answers, police turned to a new type of forensic science, one that had never before been used in a criminal case anywhere in the world. 13-year-old Stephen, the oldest of the two boys who were assaulted and left for dead in Stenger's Pond, was in intensive care for a week. His condition gradually improved. He was extremely fortunate. Doctors found no evidence of permanent injury.
Fortunately, he'd had an episode that was short enough so that he suffered no permanent injury to his brain. But during the time of recovery, he needed a fair amount of intensive care support.
Police had three suspects in custody: Brian Davis, Christopher Green, and a juvenile we'll call Jason. All denied any involvement in the attacks. Brian Davis and Jason had no prior brushes with the law, but Christopher Green had a long history of petty offenses and small-time violence. Police took the sneakers from Green's basement, but no one was sure if the mud on the soles could be used as evidence.
We had the shoes. How do we find out now, find someone who's going to tell us what to do with this?
You understand exactly what it is we're trying to do.
Waterford police spent weeks calling around the country, looking for someone who might be able to help. the FBI told them of a scientist at nearby Connecticut College.
Here we are going all over the United States. Connecticut College is 3 minutes, 5 minutes from our police station.
The scientist was Dr. Peter Siver, a forensic limnologist, an expert on microscopic life in freshwater environments. Dr. Siver was asked to find out if the mud on green sneakers came from Stenger's Pond. He took the mud from the sneakers and added a mixture of sulfuric acid and potassium dichromate, which removed the dirt, leaving behind only the life forms that may have existed in the water. It's a world invisible to the naked eye.
Inside that small drop of water exists literally hundreds of different organisms. They come in all different arrays, all different shapes, all different colors, and it's an entirely different world underneath that one drop of water.
And what Dr. Siver found were diatoms, microscopic single-cell organisms, a form of algae. Each diatom is housed in an incredibly complex structure made up of silica or glass.
I would say that diatoms are pieces of art. They're pieces of art because each diatom can make exactly the same pattern each time it makes a new cell. And these patterns are very ornate. They're highly artistic in their look.
While diatoms may be art, they can also be pieces of evidence. Any body of water has hundreds, if not thousands, of species of diatoms. The types of diatoms and how many exist of the various species is unique to that body of water.
In any given water body, you can essentially examine the microscopic organisms and, in effect, create a fingerprint for that water body.
On the sneakers, Dr. Siver found large numbers of one type of diatom known as eunotia. Shown here, eunotia are characterized by the crescent shapes of their glass shells. There were 3 species of eunotia on the suspect's sneakers, and they were there in unusually high concentrations. And Dr. Siver found one more clue. He found what's known as a scaled chrysophyte. Scaled chrysophytes are related to diatoms, but unlike diatoms, they can swim. There was only one species of chrysophyte in the mud, Malamonas caudata, shown here magnified 2,000 times. When Dr. Siver analyzed the water samples from Stenger's Pond, he found the same high concentrations of eunotia and the same species of scaled chrysophyte. The fingerprint of the water at Stenger's Pond was the same as the sample on the sneakers of Christopher Green. This was the break police had been counting on.
One thing that we found is there's always a scientist out there. As off the wall as it may sound, or what you're trying to accomplish, we have found there's always somebody out there that will listen to you.
Christopher Green, Brian Davis, and Jason were arrested and charged with assault and attempted murder. But the question now turned to motive. Why did they attack the 2 young boys? And was there another intended victim that day? Forensic scientists found a way to prove that one of the suspect's sneakers had been in the water at Stenger's Pond, where the 2 young boys had been assaulted and left for dead.
I think the physical evidence in this case was just overwhelming. And the diatoms and the pond evidence, or the aquatic evidence, whatever way you want to use it, was just devastating. And I think the defense attorneys realized that.
The forensic analysis showed that when Christopher Green went into the water to strike his victims, he got mud on his shoes, mud that contained the microscopic fingerprint of the water in Stenger's Pond. The diatoms in that mud clearly tied him to the crime scene.
For me, I thought it was unique and unusual because it's something that you normally don't read about in textbooks.
Even though Stephen and Bobby's bicycles were stolen after the assault, police and prosecutors do not believe robbery was the motive.
These three kids, I am totally convinced, were on a mission that day. As a result of interviewing the three after their arrest, they went out that day to look to kill somebody. There's no doubt in my mind.
Can I help you?
Yeah.
Police believe that Susan Picardi was originally the intended victim. Brian Davis did not have diabetes as he claimed, but only used it as an excuse to gain entry to her home.
Have a seat, and I'll get you some grape juice.
Thanks.
When he rejoined his accomplices in Susan's backyard, they may have been planning how to get into the house.
The real alarm bells went off when I went upstairs and I saw two boys in the corner of my yard, and then I sort of all put it together, and then I started feeling like I was just set up.
Fortunately, Susan Picardi saw them in her bathroom mirror and called the police. She looks back to that day and often wonders how close she was to danger.
A great way to describe it as a sixth sense. The mirror was in the right place, the kids were in the right place. It was meant to be for me to see them and to, just by their body language, understand that something is not right here.
Police determined that Christopher Green, the only one of the defendants with a history of violence, had instigated the attacks.
Christopher Green was probably the ringleader for the other two. He was the one that brought the bat. He was the one that brought the duct tape. He was the one that did the striking on our victims. He's the one that basically directed the other two.
Brian Davis and Christopher Green were both tried as adults and were sentenced to a minimum of 18 years in prison. Their 16-year-old accomplice, Jason, was only 2 weeks shy of his 17th birthday when he committed the crime. As a result, he was tried and convicted as a juvenile and was sentenced to spend time in the facility for young offenders. He has since been released. The microscopic diatom evidence on Christopher Green's sneakers, so simple in purpose, so magnificent in design, and so potent as evidence. For Waterford police and for law enforcement around the world, the case set a precedent.
It's a landmark case. It was the first time that this evidence, or evidence of an aquatic environment, meaning the diatoms, were used to place a suspect at a crime scene.
We found that it had never been used before. What was nice about it is they were willing to take it on and try it. And that was the key for us.
Shortly after this case, law enforcement in Switzerland solved the murder of a young boy using diatom evidence. The boy had drowned, and the species of diatoms in the victim's lungs matched the species of diatoms found on the gas pedal of the suspect's automobile. Both cases were solved because a group of Connecticut detectives had a hunch that some mud on the bottom of a shoe might tie a suspect to a crime.
I would never say give up being the old-fashioned, hard beaten-the-road cop, but you've got to be aware of the sciences that are there to help you. If you don't, you're beating yourself.
A lot of the thoughts that Lieutenant McCarthy came up with, we always thought were unusual. But 9 out of 10 times he was right. I have to say 99.8% of the time he was right.
In 1988, the body of a young woman was discovered in an Ohio river under ice. Most of the evidence found at the crime scene, hairs, fibers, and fingerprints, had been washed away. But the victim's 6-year-old son unwittingly told investigators all they needed to know about the killer. And he did it without saying a word. The clue was in his genes.
I will see you guys later on. Thank you so much for joining us, and take care of yourselves, and I will see you later. Lots of love. Bye everybody.